Brock Long of FEMA saying very specifically, we are doing everything we can to, quote, stabilize and sustain life. Folks, that is not hyperbole. There is no water right now on Puerto Rico, at least not enough. And people are starting to get hysterical. There's not enough refrigeration for things like medication. Speaking of which, first Hurricane Maria tore up Puerto Rico, and now the FDA is warning of possible critical drug shortages here in the U.S. because of it. The island nation, did you know this, is host to major pharmaceutical companies' production facilities. While the agency didn't specify which medications are at risk, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Amgen, Merck, AbbVie, Eli Lilly, all of them have plants on Puerto Rico. Now, some don't have water or electricity there, of course, and getting anything off the island, exports or humans, is still a huge challenge. So we're watching the pharmaceutical story. That, as an army of American companies steps up to provide humanitarian relief. Diageo, FedEx, and Amgen have contributed, while Starbucks, Verizon, Google, and Lowe's have all pledged aid. But when you look at all of those logos, those are well-established, gigantic companies. How about this? A startup social media app has turned into a digital lifeline this hurricane season. As Hurricane Harvey threatened to literally drown people in Houston, neighborhood news app Nextdoor found itself at the center of hurricane rescue efforts. The company's site allows, the original intention was to allow neighbors to connect with each other and post about goings-on in the area, like missing animals or maybe break-ins. CEO Nirav Tolia is with us in a Fox Business exclusive, and we appreciate you joining us. You just heard the FEMA representative and the leader, Brock Long, talk about how desperate the situation is in Puerto Rico, but it got very desperate in Houston. Let me show our viewers first just one example of how your app turned into a 911 help us call center. Here's one. Rescue needed at Worcester Court in Houston. 4 feet of water in the house, and rising occupants headed to the roof with animals. Have been calling for help, can't get through. Please help. And then you see a neighbor replied, unloading canoe now. Nirav, that's incredible, all through Nextdoor. Did this surprise you?
It did surprise us, but at the end of the day, in the worst of times, sometimes we see the best of human qualities. And we built Nextdoor to really enhance the ability to be a good neighbor. A good neighbor, when you recommend a babysitter, is one thing, but when lives are at stake, that's when you should really step up. And that's what we saw during the hurricanes. We're not talking about simple social media here. We're talking about saving lives. And we saw Nextdoor come alive and act as that lifeline, connecting neighbors, and connecting neighbors not just to each other, but to public agencies, and ultimately saving lives.
Well, yeah, it's a domino effect. If you reach another neighbor who happens to know somebody at the 911 call center. But what Brock Long just said of FEMA was a little disturbing. He said, we are pretty much woefully unprepared to really deal with large-scale emergencies like this and be able to turn on a dime. This is not, and I repeat, not to denigrate anything that rescue workers or first responders have done. They've been heroes. However, it looks like if the government paired with private companies, with the private sector like you, they could do such a much better job. There was down to animals. There was this one about a cat that was missing. And of course, human lives are extraordinarily important, but we know how concerned people are about their animals. It was a deaf cat, 19-year-old deaf cat, found just now in the midst of the Irma evacuation. Do we have that one that we can put up? On HHI, South Carolina, thanks to Nextdoor, entire community searching for days, and they found it. These are very personal stories for an app that was really a social media startup just a few years ago. I remember interviewing you in your first year.
Well, we all have to take responsibility, and for us to create that kind of culture of awareness that FEMA talks about, it's not just about the first responders and the government agencies. They are doing critical work, but we have to do our part as well, whether we're the citizens that are affected or whether we're citizens that can provide help. And what we've seen over and over again is that technology can play a role. It can amplify voices, it can connect people, ultimately it can make our efforts stronger, and that's where Nextdoor comes in.
Yeah, I like that amplify. I called it a digital megaphone to pretty much get out the word help. Before we go, I'm very interested to know when you feel that this is big enough to go public, because it looks like with just the legions of neighborhoods that are now signing up for it, plus this new dimension that the hurricanes have shown, is that an opportunity soon?
Well, when we think about things like hurricanes that are real tragedies, I mean, we're not thinking about the business model. We're not thinking about the business impact. We're thinking about trying to be civic infrastructure. The company overall, though, now services over 80% of American neighborhoods.
Wow.
And we think we have this incredible opportunity to not just build a great business, but to help these neighborhoods get stronger and safer, particularly in some of these tragic times.
Folks, I remember talking to Nirav years and years ago. It was just an idea, and he believed in it. He's built it, and congratulations, you actually saved lives. Thanks, Nirav.